Welcome to Miles from Her View, the podcast where we dive deep into the unfiltered reality of fitness, strength training, and nutrition within womanhood and motherhood. I am your host, Kat, founder of KatFit Strength. I'm a career strength and conditioning coach, entrepreneur, lifelong athlete, and a mom of 2 active boys. In each episode, we explore the unique challenges and triumphs faced by women navigating the complexities of life. From juggling family and career to prioritizing self-care, we dissect the systems and the habits that shape our health and wellness. Join us for real stories, authentic advice, and genuine conversations as we empower each other to embrace our journeys and find strength in vulnerability. Welcome back. Today I'm with Avery Wasmansky. She is a licensed trauma-informed therapist who works with women and moms who feel like they are chronically overwhelmed and feel like they are not good enough in their parenting or relationships. Many of the women Avery supports experience some combinations of symptoms of ADHD, anxiety, and trauma. Avery incorporates mindfulness and other somatic techniques in her therapy while always focusing on the relationship between client and therapist as a primary tool for healing and change. She sees clients both virtually in all of Pennsylvania and in person in Royersford, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. But first, let's really get to know you, how you got to where you are and how you got working in this field.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Kat.
Absolutely.
So like you said, I'm a therapist in Pennsylvania. I got into this field actually not working with adults. I started working with kids and then went into some supervisory roles in community mental health. And then I was really missing the clinical aspect of my work in terms of working with, people one-on-one. And I got back into working with clients, seeing adults for the first time individually. And I was like, wow, this is where I really need to be. So I have 2 kids myself. And so through my own parenting journey, my own therapy journey, handling my own stuff that comes up for me, I've really kind of honed in on my niche of really enjoying working with women, especially moms. Many of them tend to have either symptoms of ADHD or have ADHD or have come to me after years of maybe and I put that in air quotes, just being diagnosed with anxiety or depression. And really there's an underlying piece of ADHD going on that has never been addressed. And so I really enjoy working with that population. And I myself was diagnosed with ADHD after my second baby. And so I also have that lived experience of understanding what that is like and kind of the struggles that can come up for moms in working.
Yeah, definitely. And I find with the female population as a whole, and again, this is a generalization, but diagnosing ADHD looks so different than diagnosing ADHD from a boy or male perspective.
Absolutely.
And the other thing, and this comes a little later in life, the one thing that I don't want to say it's trending, but research is showing that when women start it's not all women, but in that perimenopause, ADHD symptoms or that diagnosis can really come into play. And
Yes.
I myself, after my second child, I had postpartum PTSD and dealt with a lot of I'm going to say residual anxiety from that. And it stemmed, I don't want to say a lot from, but just finding that groundedness within and that own voice. And I feel, and I see this with a lot of my clients, that societal pressure to handle it all, even in the realm of a truly supportive partnership and family, it's, maybe we're programmed when we're younger from the society, or we adopt these internal dialogues of we have to handle it all. Not always on our own, but it's just that for me, it was a differentiation between reality and adjusting my expectations to seeing reality for what it is and not trying to force this is how it should be.
Yeah.
Welcome to Miles from Her View, the podcast where we dive deep into the unfiltered reality of fitness, strength training, and nutrition within womanhood and motherhood. I am your host, Kat, founder of KatFit Strength. I'm a career strength and conditioning coach, entrepreneur, lifelong athlete, and a mom of 2 active boys. In In each episode, we explore the unique challenges and triumphs faced by women navigating the complexities of life. From juggling family and career to prioritizing self-care, we dissect the systems and the habits that shape our health and wellness. Join us for real stories, authentic advice, and genuine conversations as we empower each other to embrace our journeys and find strength in vulnerability. I'd love to hear because, I mean, are we adulted or in the adulthood of social media? And I remember
Hmm.
when my babies were younger, they're 10 and 13, which is shocking to say.
Yeah.
It was that big birth of blogging, and mommy blogs were on the scene, and
Hmm.
they were like, I remember feeling like if I couldn't put my kid in 16 different outfits in a day, and Instagram was on the rise and all of this, like I just felt like a failure. I'd love
Hmm.
to hear your thoughts kind of on that, social media impact versus like real life.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think social media can have such a huge impact in both directions, but I think that especially for, and again, I'm going to tie it back to like the population of people that I work with, a lot of my clients tend to have a lot of anxiety, tend to have some self-esteem issues, tend to have challenges with self-confidence, especially when it comes to somebody who's been maybe struggling with ADHD undiagnosed for their entire lives, and they have a lot of like negative internal dialogue going on. And so when you're kind of already your own worst critic,
Yeah.
and you are seeing all of this information on social media that's telling you like all of the things that you should be doing or that you aren't doing, or maybe you did something, different from what this, I don't know, big name, parenting expert says, it kind of can really make you spiral in
Yeah.
terms of like your confidence as a parent. And so I think it is really important to be mindful as we take in all of this information. And I mean, there really are a couple like concrete ways we can be mindful about it, but one is just identifying that you know your kids best as a mom. And so even if you have somebody who's an expert saying, you should be doing this thing to get your kid to sleep, they don't know your child. And so they don't know you. And so you really have to make sure that you are doing what feels best for you and like, trying to trust your gut there and checking in with yourself. Like when you're seeing information on a particular social media account, like what's that like for you? Is it just causing you to feel more shame? Is it making you anxious? Is it making you feel like you're just not a good enough parent? Or is it actually just inspiring you to like do something a little bit different or make some, minor shifts in what you're already doing to, make it more manageable for you? And so I think really checking in with yourself, like, how is this making me feel after I look at all of this and read all this information? Like, if it's not making you feel good, unfollow those accounts, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. No,
there's
I
nothing
love
wrong with that.
yeah. I'm a firm believer in that. I even tell my clients, like, if my account, and I hope it doesn't make them feel bad, but if my account is not filling your enoughness and it's
Hmm.
filling more guilt and shame, unfollow me. Like, I'm not going to take it personal. And then
Yeah.
also please tell me like why, like, because I don't want to be that, but I have no control of where people are at.
Sure.
And I think that is huge, that even if it is someone who, it's okay to mute them and unfollow them,
Hmm. Hmm.
because does not, in my opinion, it should not tarnish your relationship with that individual,
Yeah.
because social media is a weird landscape, and
Hmm.
it is hard. Like, human emotion is hard to understand, and I obviously, like, social media is very two-dimensional. Even though you get to see people talk and it looks more three-dimensional and you're connecting with them, you
Hmm.
don't really know who that is, especially someone who's like a, dare I say, like a guru in that field or an
Hmm. Hmm.
influencer. There's so much more that happens behind the scenes, but I
Yeah.
love that. I think getting to that internal feeling of like, how are you feeling? How are you receiving this information? Is it building you up or tearing you down?
Hmm.
And so yeah, that's a huge, huge thing. I'd love
Yeah.
to dive into this notion of like ADHD,
Mhm.
because like I said, I don't want to say it's trending, because I hate when I'm like, oh, it's trending, it's a cool thing to do. But
Right.
like, because there has been discrepancies in diagnosis, especially
Hmm.
between like when we were younger, boys and girls. Oftentimes girls go undiagnosed
Hmm.
because it does present differently. And then as we mature into adults and hit that. I hate saying midlife because I'm like, is 40 really? Or like your mid-30s, like really midlife? There's so much life left
Mhm.
that, these tendencies come out. Like how, and this also points to, I find like from what I hear from my clients and also from my own mental health journey, I never thought I was that bad when I was
Mhm.
bad
Mhm.
because we do. I'm going to speak for myself and not generalize for everyone. Like, I didn't feel I was that bad. I didn't feel like I needed help. But when I did start getting help, I was like, oh my goodness, I really needed help. And it was
Mhm.
not a bad thing. It was not weakness. It was tremendous
Mhm.
strength. But for women who might be oscillating between, ooh, do I need help with this or not? Are there markers that you see with your clients that
Mhm.
someone can be like, oh yeah, I want to explore this? Is there anything like that
Sure.
that you can share?
Well, and so I think it's definitely going to be different for everybody, but I think if we can identify that, like, if if one or more areas of our life, like our relationship with our partner or our family members or parenting, or if we work outside the home, and like any or all of that feels really overwhelming, or feels like we're just constantly falling, just touch my computer, we're constantly falling behind, or that we are just on edge all of the time, probably an indicator that like we could use some more support in some way. If we're constantly feeling like we're lacking the energy or motivation to do the things that like we feel like we want to be doing, or feel like are necessary for us to like survive our day to day, and we don't have that capacity, that might be an indicator that we could need some more support. And of course, like, if we're feeling more sad than we usually are, if our sleep is shifted, like if our sleep has gotten really bad, we're not sleeping enough, we're having nightmares or just like sleep disturbances, other than having, a child who's waking you up at night, right? Or if our appetite has changed and we're have a real loss of appetite, or going the opposite direction and are having just more challenges with maybe like, overeating in some circumstances, those kind of things are pretty big indicators. A lot of the clients that come to me have kind of identified that they're feeling just like overwhelmed kind of chronically, like it just all the time, not necessarily by anything in particular that's like really large and looming. And sometimes that happens, of course, but it's more of a feeling, and this goes for most people who have ADHD that I work with. It's more of this feeling of like, I'm chronically overwhelmed, even by things that seem somewhat small or insignificant, or, you know, one thing kind of pushes me over the edge to get to a point where I'm like losing it with my kids, and I didn't expect to get there. And so being more irritable, things like that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I'm glad you brought up eating because that's one thing that I always talk with my clients about is like,
Hmm.
I'm gonna say overeating isn't always a sign that you can't control yourself around food.
No,
The brain, in the way it's engineered, is to keep us safe. And when it doesn't feel safe, it's going to gravitate towards quick and easy things to eat.
sure.
And so, you know, the way, I try to keep a really good, I'm going to say, ear down to the ground with my clients and be like, are you talking with someone? Because I
Hmm.
work with clients who are high achievers.
Hmm.
Oftentimes they are in high pressure management
Hmm.
situations, either as a solo business owner or in the corporate world. And it is a lot, and they're juggling a lot at home. And they are the CEO of the house as well
Hmm.
as potentially a CEO in the corporate world.
Hmm.
And, I always explain to them, like, it is a billion% okay to not always have yourself at top of mind, but where it becomes troublesome is, to your point, where you're constantly feeling so overwhelmed, where you're feeling like you're not good enough, or
Hmm.
where you're feeling like the world is spinning and
Hmm.
you can't put your feet down. And it's
Hmm.
like that's where we need to adjust. And in the relation of with the food is I always find that it could be a lot of overtiredness, a lot of like they've undereaten throughout the day.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it is that like
Hmm.
it's the one thing that brings them comfort and they're searching for that pouring into their own cup
Sure.
because they're so depleted.
Hmm.
So I do find when my clients seek a therapist to help them, it's not that their priorities are messed up, but it really helps give back to them. And
Sure.
I think, that I can only help them so much. And the work that we do in, I say in the gym, whether virtually or in person, it is adding to stress.
Mm-hmm.
Stress, like the body can't differentiate stress. Stress is stress. And so there are times where I'm like, okay, we need to realign. We need to, dare I say, get the head right, meaning
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
let's calm down the central nervous system. Let's get that social emotional feeling good, that you feel
Mm-hmm.
in control. And maybe we can work back in the strength training. You're going to, and
Yeah.
the cardio and the movement, and you're going to gain more from that than feeling like, I have to get the weight off. I need to build strength
Mm-hmm.
when, if we come from as much as arrested, I'm going to say, I just said this to a friend this morning. I was like, man, I'm a little tired this morning, but I feel like I have this permanent state of just barely tired, like, and not fully rested just because
Mm-hmm.
of parenting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that, there may be some ounce of tiredness there, but a
Sure.
chronic, perpetual build
Right.
isn't what we want to feel on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the one thing I also see with clients who come in with me is this all or nothing perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting. And I say this from like, I've been there. I fall into it as well. So it's
Yeah.
not from like a pedestal of like, I know what I'm doing. But especially of like the lack of adaptability and flexibility with ourselves, where you can have really high goals, but you know, it can be absent with the like perfection or that all or
Mm-hmm.
nothing. Do you
Mm-hmm.
find that with some of your clients too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with so many of my clients, we are kind of like constantly working on moving more into that gray area, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to acknowledge that like multiple things can be true at the same time. We don't necessarily have to do something perfectly. We can do it good enough, and that is okay. And so, you know, working on this like idea of self-acceptance that like we we can do things and we don't have to always be doing them exactly in a way that feels like society is telling us to do them or that we've just kind of learned is the right way to do something. We have to do it in a way that like works for us and that is aligned with, our values and actually what we have the capacity for in this moment.
I
And
love what
so,
you said there, the
yeah,
capacity for in that moment, which is huge. And I feel when you have that, like, when you know what that means, it helps release
big
so much
time.
pressure.
Big
It's,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, something, even thinking of like a concrete example of something that has come up recently in some of my sessions is like, if we can identify that we're not always going to have the capacity to like go at that 100% mode, we can actually come up with even like a range of like, all right, I'm gonna have these high capacity days, and that's great. And we can be like really quote unquote productive, right? Or get things done that we really want to get done. But we're also gonna have these days that are like somewhere in the middle, and we're also gonna have these days that are really low. And
Mhm.
so on like a maybe low capacity day, our goal for that day really has to be set to like meet those low capacity energy and motivation. And so maybe that goal is just to like feed yourself, hydrate, and rest. And
Yeah.
like that is okay. And so part of that is just that kind of internal dialogue of acknowledging that I'm allowed to have these days where like I'm not going to do anything above and beyond what is like keeping me or my kids alive and breathing, right?
Yeah.
And we might on a high capacity day like we might be able to do the majority of it without additional assistance, but being able to acknowledge that like we're gonna have these ups and downs and that's kind of normal.
Yeah. And I love what you said right there. And I'm going to pull this out is
Yeah.
you're allowed in that
Yeah.
permission. Give that
Yeah.
permission back to yourself, because we as moms, if our child, no matter what age they're in, is feeling overwhelmed, if
Hmm.
they're depleted and we know their rest wasn't great, maybe they're battling a cold, maybe they're
Hmm.
overwhelmed with a test coming up, a big sport event, etc. We intervene and help, manage that and coach them through that. And
Yeah.
for us, there's no one doing that for us.
Right.
Hopefully, I mean, some, who have therapists like yourself
Hmm.
can help work with that, or that really good friend that we can turn to and feel like that. But a vast majority, it's hard.
Hmm.
And you know, it's okay to just get through those days. And I know when I learned that, what do I have capacity, like asking myself in the
Mhm.
moment versus, dare I say, spiraling and then starting
Mhm.
to like lash out at my family and just, not helping myself manage. And it doesn't mean I'm
Mhm.
like cool and copacetic. There are times we still have moments we're human.
Sure.
But I started saying, Mom doesn't have the capacity right now, and
Mhm.
I need to sit down.
Mhm.
I'm going to help you, but my capacity right now is
Mhm.
gone. I'm going to
Right.
sit and then I will help you.
Mhm.
For me, utilizing those words, one, my kids were like, okay, cool, I'll come back.
Mhm.
Two, they would be like, it's a pressing issue, and they would go find dad.
Mhm.
Three, it was like communicating to myself that it's not that I don't want to help my child.
Mhm.
I need to serve me to be able to
Mhm.
serve my child.
Yeah.
And if I'm not going to serve me, we're going to be like burning ourselves out, and that is not healthy. And so I've seen that change over time with my kids where they're just like, you know what, I don't have the capacity to do that. I really want to, but I don't have that. I said, great. The
Right.
desire is there, but we need to recharge so that
Mhm.
when it comes time, we can push on
Right.
those times. And it it's huge. It's like we are not endless amounts of energy.
Mhm.
We're organic beings that it's okay to stay in your pajamas all day
Yeah.
and just relax. And then like you said, there are going to be those high days where you're going to be out and conquering the world. And I share that with my clients with their workouts. Like, we will celebrate workouts that are undone. We will
Mhm.
celebrate sets and reps left on the table. We will
Mhm.
celebrate showing up for a full workout and knocking it out of the park just as much as a workout that you needed not to do
Mhm.
because you needed to rest, because
Mhm.
that helps you, dare I say, stay in the game longer than forcing yourself.
Sure.
And you're going to create more friction and resistance with
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, and what a beautiful way to like model that for our kids, right?
mhm.
Like modeling that it's okay to rest, that we don't always have to be like going all the time and in this kind of like chronic state of like high stress. Which I think oftentimes kind of precedes like a really sometimes really high functioning adult, really, perfectionistic tendencies is like we've learned throughout our childhood and in our lives that like we have to keep moving or we're going to fail.
Exactly. No, I full heartedly agree. And I've learned, being someone who's like, was ingrained, like, if you're not moving, you're failing,
Mhm.
that the more I rest and the more I fill my cup, the actually more I can take on,
Yeah.
which is funny. And it doesn't mean like, I'm stressing myself out and burning myself out and then
Mhm.
replenishing. It's,
Mhm.
I have done a better job at, like what you said earlier, sticking to my core values, sticking to
Mhm.
the priorities. And overall, I've become more productive. I've,
Mhm.
it's hard to articulate, like, but it's this cool thing where it's like the more I've given back to me, where I was
Mhm.
afraid to take time to rest, to give
Mhm.
back to myself, whether I thought it was selfish or that concept that was some part ingrained along the way, whether
Mhm.
societal or upbringing, that if I'm resting, that's bad. That's a sign of laziness. You know, the more and again, I want to stress, I'm not burning myself out. like, it's been one where I think become more aware of those slight little like sparks of like, ooh, we're starting to get towards burnout. We
Yeah.
need to like pull back.
Yeah. Well,
So
and that's right. We have to pay attention to what our body's telling us, right? Like we have to pay attention to our body saying, you need rest or you need to eat or you need whatever it is that you need. You need something that is energizing and stimulating versus something that's going to kind of like help you downregulate, which tends to be a big challenge for people who have ADHD in particular. Listening to
yeah.
their bodies is really hard. And so that's something that, is a big focus in a lot of the sessions that I have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. And it kind of like segues into something like with that really ambitious goals and
Hmm.
self-care,
Hmm.
like finding the time in the day, because I mean, I'm
Hmm.
in the era of there is sports drop-offs, music
Hmm.
lesson drop-offs. We've got my kids are filling their social calendars. I'm like, where's my social calendar
Hmm.
now? And it's like being pulled in all these directions when we want to feel calm. Yeah, I'd
Hmm.
love to hear like strategies or just things that are like how to approach that, from a whole of like, where do we find ourselves in that? I hate using the word balance because to me, I feel like that's such a perfection seeking because I just don't think
hmm
there's ever a balance. So,
hmm Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple ways to go about that. One is like when you're talking about like the kind of busyness of just like having kids who are now in like lots of scheduled activities or just have lots of social events. I think that does have to do with communication with like everyone in the family as a whole and doing almost like a family check-in. Like, how are we doing? Do we all have the capacity for this? Because it's not just the, your one of your children's social, capacities. It's really, do I have the ability or capacity to like take them to all these events? And like, how is this impacting the entire family unit? And so I do think checking in with everybody, especially if your kids are like an older age, where they can kind of have input in that conversation. I mean, I also think that, we have to understand that again, we're going to have days where like our capacity for that self-care is lower than others. And so what is like the bare minimum that you have to do in a day to feel like you're doing something to take care of yourself? And maybe that means, and this might just be my experience. I know not everybody has this ability, and some days I don't even, but like maybe that means like waking up a couple minutes before your kids get up and like everybody is loud and running around the house, right? Where you have some quiet time to yourself to kind of like start your day a little bit slowly. Or maybe that means that, after the kids get dropped off at school, you have like 5 minutes in your car before you go to your next activity, meeting, whatever. And that's where we at least find some quiet time. Like we can identify these like very small, like mini moments throughout our days where we can, even though it's not considered, these major self-care moments, we can find these like tiny moments throughout our day where we're even noticing, like, all right, what do I need right now? Right? Again, checking in with yourself, identifying like, where am I, what is lacking today, or what do I need in order to like feel energized or feel my best in this moment. Um, and so I think like taking some pressure off of like doing like all of these activities and events that are self-care, right? Because again, that's just more of that kind of like really high achieving perfectionistic standards of what it means to take care of yourself. So like dialing that back if that's a challenge at times.
yeah. No, and I love that. I mean, I know when I talk to my clients, I'm like, what are your self-care routines?
hmm
And it does, and it's brilliant. It does become these, I'm gonna say extravagant things. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exhausting. Like,
Right.
and I'm like, well, how does it serve you? Well, I struggle to find time. I struggle to, okay.
hmm
So, and like to your point, like those pockets of time are so invaluable.
hmm
One of the things that I had started, actually started, we got a second dog, a puppy last
hmm
December. And it was just literally letting the dogs out after their breakfast or first thing in the morning with my coffee, standing on the
hmm
patio. There's really no like 4-point check-in system. It's
hmm
just
hmm
focusing on my breathing,
Yeah.
tasting the coffee, looking into my backyard. And it has been such an awesome thing that there are times, it's not every single morning.
hmm
There have been weeks where it's gone, but when I do it again, I'm like, oh gosh, it's just so amazing. It like,
Yeah.
and my coffee tastes so much better for some
hmm
reason,
hmm It does.
but it's just like these little pockets of time where I'm like, when, like, to your point, like, if there is 5 minutes, in the car, you're in that pickup line,
hmm
if you can, don't answer that email.
hmm
Don't scroll on social media.
hmm
Just sit there, maybe have no music on, maybe have like melodic music on, and
hmm
just connect with yourself because it's going to help tap into letting your body just and that mind unwind. And
hmm
I get it. I mean, like I'm always like, on to the next. What's the next? What is here? What is here? Like,
hmm
and trying to get the family from point A to point B,
hmm
where sometimes we just need to
hmm
decompress and not think about that.
hmm
So,
Yeah.
yeah. But it is tough because we do see these extravagant things on social media
Right.
of, I see it a lot in the like, which is, I call it bro science of like, start your morning at 3 a.m. and do a 4 hour meditation. And I'm like,
Right.
where are the kids at this point? And I'm
And when
like,
am I sleeping? Right?
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it is so exhausting. It's like, where am I going to find the time to
Mm-hmm.
do this? And it
Mm-hmm.
is one more layer of, oh gosh, this is one more thing I have to think about.
Right. It's another
But
task. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I always sort of say to my clients too, we want to find simple, but simple doesn't mean easy.
Mm-hmm.
Simple can feel really hard in the beginning, and that's okay. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
have friction. You're going to have trouble, you know, getting up from that couch to start a workout. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to have trouble sitting in a car that's quiet
Mm-hmm.
because you're used to filling it with noise. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to feel that friction. But if you can get past that little bit of friction and just tell yourself, okay, 2 reps, show up for this, like just
Mm-hmm.
start a warm up for, I would say, the warm up and mobility is the gateway to the workout
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let that emotion of, I have all these things to do, stop you.
Yeah.
You know, I understand it's hard. For myself on Saturday, like our kitchen was a mess. There was
Mm-hmm.
like a load and a half of dishes on the counters in the sink. The dishwasher was clean. And I literally was looking at it. I was like, I need to get all this done. I don't want to deal with it when I come back from my run and do my workout.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, stop. It's not harming anyone. It will get done.
Right.
Serve yourself first before
Mm-hmm.
you do this.
Yeah.
And it all got done. The kitchen was
Mm-hmm.
clean.
Mm-hmm.
There was no one that was going to be like, well, you didn't get your dishes clean before the workout. What are you doing out here? So it can be hard, but
Mm-hmm.
challenge yourself. I'm going to say
Mm-hmm.
challenge yourself to leave a full sink of
Yeah.
dishes.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
part of the process too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think too, in a functional family unit is like, I know, and maybe it was part of that anxiety of trying to control,
Mm-hmm.
that once I started, I don't want to say letting my family fail, but letting them take ownership of certain
Mm-hmm.
things,
Mm-hmm.
like allowed the pressure to come off of me.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
so I don't know if you've seen that with some of your clients, or you kind of like challenge them in certain
Mm-hmm.
ways to like not always take on
Mm-hmm.
everything in the household.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's really identifying like where can I actually let go of something here?
Yeah.
Like, why am I holding on to this task or whatever it looks like? Why am I holding on to this responsibility? Because it's just adding more to my plate here. Where can I let go? Or where can I ask for help when I need it? Because sometimes asking for help feels really hard, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Help is tough to ask for. And I stress with my clients, I'm like, not knowing a certain aspect of a profession, especially like in my realm, like I wouldn't expect my clients to know the things that I know about.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they come to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same for your clients. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's fine. You don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
and that's okay, but don't assume you should know. It's better to ask questions. And I always say, I'm like, there's no wrong question or
Mm-hmm.
inarticulate question with me.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask it a million times, it's
Mm-hmm.
totally fine. But when you don't ask, or when you don't, and especially with the clients that I only see virtually, if you don't let me know something, I can't help you or help you
Mm-hmm.
troubleshoot it or
Mm-hmm.
help with that mindset shift
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not a mind reader. It would be
Yeah.
great. Oh my goodness, my job would be, I don't want to say easier, but my goodness, I would know more.
Sure. Sure.
And I'm sure for you, if you were able to read your clients' minds, I'd be like, oh, here we go.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a lot. And I think today there's a lot of pressure, and also with social media is great, but it can really gum up the works with
Mm-hmm.
how we feel we should parent, or
Mm-hmm.
how our house should look, how we should be as a parent, a
Mm-hmm.
woman, a mom, all of the things
Yeah.
that I'm a firm believer, like, you know, reaching out to a therapist isn't a state of constant. It is good check-in.
Mm-hmm.
It's good throughout the seasons of your life,
Yeah.
that it can really help move you forward and, you know, prevent some friction
Yeah.
with that all or nothing or perfection seeking things that we all fall into. I mean,
Exactly.
and it's okay to keep coming back to these things. Like,
Hmm.
so what is, if you could like leave everybody with one, I'm gonna say piece of advice. I know this is like a huge ambiguous question. You're like, I don't know, a ton of things. Like, what would it be? So,
Well, I know we've talked a lot this morning about just like having really high expectations for maybe productivity or performance. And so I think to kind of counter that is to really practice being gentle with yourself. Like practice acknowledging that you are a human who's allowed to make mistakes and that you are somebody who is allowed to have good days, bad days, and whatever falls between that. And so acknowledging that, we're not always going to be on all the time and that that's okay.
yeah, I love that. I love that. It is, yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly days all make it up, and we are
Yeah.
human, and that is huge. I think huge. Where
Yeah.
can people find you?
Sure. So they can visit me at my website. It's AveryWosmanskiLPCtherapy.com, or I'm on Instagram at AveryWosmanskiLPC, also on Facebook at the same handle.
Okay, awesome. And that
Yeah.
stuff will also be in the show notes for anyone looking to follow her, or if anyone wants to pursue her therapy, it would be really great. And this
Yeah.
was such an awesome conversation. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Kat.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of Miles from Her View. Your support means the world to me, and I truly appreciate you being a part of our community. If you found today's episode helpful and want to stay informed about all things KatFit Strength, make sure to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. You'll receive exclusive insights, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. To sign up, simply visit the show notes or the subscription link. To discover more about KatFit Strength programs and how you can ignite your fitness journey, head over to our website at www.kat.fit. There you'll find everything you need to invigorate your path to strength and resilience. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you in our upcoming episodes. Take care, and remember, act to take the next step.